So we enter the Panther King's castle. The main problem is going to be the milk table, which we see here next to him in the distance. That's the main problem. That's what the main problem is going to be caused by. It is a table. So it's similar, even though this is a silly comparison, to the table that Berry had in her room where Conker on the phone is ringing her, trying to reach her from that phone. It's a phone sitting on a table, but it doesn't reach her directly. Of course, tables are very common objects as well. Again, I know, but we're going to mention it just in case. It comes in handy later. And this has to do with drink as well. In this case, milk is the preferred drink, but drink is also mostly what has gotten Conker into trouble because of getting him drunk, and therefore once drunk, presumably unable to make the right choices or something like that. And you could take that, I think, metaphorically as well, not a literal drunkenness necessarily. And I think that the game backs my interpretation up, but we can get to that when we do. So anyway, it's a different day now. I woke up. I'm going to talk about this some more. So I'm not sure what I talked about so far. I think milk and drinking. So that's where we're at now. Milk is about to be drunk by the king. Of course, he's a cat, so he drinks milk. So I guess that's the joke, right? One thing that might be worth mentioning is that I mentioned how the table now is like this crucial instrument in this section, and there was a table in Barry's room for whatever that's worth. And here the the Panther King is dressed in a purple sort of robe with yellow sort of lining, or whatever you'd call it. Like there's yellow details on it, which is the same color scheme that Berry was dressed in at the beginning of the game. She's got purple, sort of pinkish clothes, and then yellow details or sections on those clothes. So those are the two color schemes that the two kind of main characters that Conker is facing in this game are. On the one hand, his girlfriend, and on the other hand, the king who is trying to disrupt his life. So it's like his life and the disruption of his life at the same time. And the disruption that happens here is mainly that the Panther King's daily life is structured in a certain way, and here it fails. So something fails that is very, it has to do with the minute details of his life somehow. The minute details of his life, a cup of milk falling from a table where it should have been stood, right? That becomes the problem. The problem is something very small, very sort of insignificant in a sense. And then Conker wakes up after the Panther King has had his moment of getting angry, as if Conker waking up were the process of the Panther King getting angry, that needs to then become Conker having his new bad day. Like Conker's about to have his bad day, the day that he mentioned was going to happen yesterday. Last night, he said, tomorrow, something, a war, is going to happen. Now the Panther King has almost started that process, saying, yes, today is going to be this day. Once we're sort of in-game, actually playing, the first bit of language that Conker says as you're walking is I feel sick. That's the first thing he says, is an expression of him feeling like something inside of him is moving, you could say. Something inside of him is nauseating him and wanting to come out, right? We then meet the Scarecrow, Birdie, and it's an interesting meeting because, well, several things. First, as you can see in this screenshot, they're both slouching in like the same way, arms kind of stretched downwards and neck bent forwards, and they both sort of meet in this position, almost as if Conker were looking in a mirror and seeing himself as a scarecrow. But also because Birdie is dressed in red, which is the same color that is associated to Conker, a red squirrel. And then there's this silly detail I don't want to make much of, but in this little plot of garden, there are, as far as I can see, 3 different vegetables growing. There's cauliflowers that are very white, and then there's carrots and pumpkins, which are very orange, and you can see them here in this screenshot behind Conker. So not all the vegetables growing here are orange, but we do get this shot, this way of framing it where Conker the red squirrel is behind these red vegetables, carrots and pumpkins, and talking to a red-dressed scarecrow. And of course, as I mentioned, one of the first people Conker meets in his adventure is that monk with the stone tablet. And the monk is also dressed in red, a red robe. And here's another silly detail on how this frame is framed, which I kind of find interesting, is that we then see Birdie with the bridge behind him. He seems to be framed very nicely in the center of the bridge that you will then have to cross in order to enter into the main hub of the game, and a bridge that has a guardian guarding it, a guardian who is an inanimate piece of material, a stone guardian. So here it's as if we're meeting the first inanimate guardian, being a lump of corn or whatever, right? A sack of corn, a scarecrow. I just like how he's framed in front of the bridge. I don't know, it makes it seem as if he's the guardian of the bridge, but at a distance, sort of thing. And why would he be the guardian of the bridge, right? We can think about that. What is he guarding? Well, first of all, he's like a scary sort of image that's supposed to scare birds away from coming to the plot of land. And gargoyles, I think, at least in some legends, are considered traditionally to scare off evil spirits from the church or cathedral they're built on. So it's also about scaring away, like birds, in this case, like spiritual birds, through your ugly, scary appearance. Also, maybe another thing I want to point out here is how Birdie is basically like a sack of corn stuck onto a stick. So he has no legs. He's just like a torso stuck onto the ground through a vertical kind of object pierced into him from behind, from what would be like his butt. And that's then what the gargoyle complains of as well. The gargoyle says he had been sitting on spiky Gothic architecture that got up his ass for too long, and so he moved to the bridge. Also, this may be unrelated, but it makes me think how Birdie teaches Conker about context-sensitive buttons and things that have to do with the mechanics of the game in a way that it would be absurd for someone in the game to understand. And it reminds me of another Rareware title in Banjo-Kazooie, how Bottles, the mole, also teaches you how to use the game. And he's also someone who, in some way, can't escape the ground. He's just stuck into a hole in the ground and is sort of lifted out of that hole through his force or something, in the way that Birdie is also just stuck to the ground through a stick and can't really move from there. He's incompatible with things that stick out of the ground. He needs to be stuck into it. And really, meetings with inanimate objects are a big part of this game. You meet the great mighty Pooh, of course. You meet, obviously a lot of the characters are inanimate objects, like the haystacks and so on, simply because it's a cartoon universe where anything inanimate can be animate. But also, I think there is a character to the inanimate side of this that's slightly different, because there are the animals that you meet, like yourself, and then there are inanimate objects. And inanimate objects seem to act as guardians mostly in the game, things to get through. So we then meet the gargoyle, and the gargoyle falls from the bridge. And it also makes me think that inanimate objects are usually made of inanimate matter, like stone, metal, or other kind of dead matter. So there's something about them that's kind of inherently linked to the ground, because most of these materials come from the ground: metals, minerals, rock, and so on, dirt. So it's as if partly they're stuck to the ground, like Birdie is, simply because they're made of the ground, or they are of the ground. And I feel that you, as Conker, in this game are descending deeper and deeper into the ground, deeper into the bowels of it, and maybe that's partly why they are guardians on your trip, because they are the guardian to the realm that you're entering into, which is the realm of matter, stone, stuff, material in itself. And here, once again, after you've defeated the gargoyle, a stone rock blocks your way again. So two stone things block your way. First the gargoyle, then an actual stone. And they are blocks blocking. So also these guardians, I think, represent some sort of a material blockage to a path that isn't flowing easily. There's like a stump or a bit of material stuff stuck there. The way the great mighty Pooh is also clogging up the pipe, so to speak. And a bridge is indeed something that crosses from one side to another. So the blockage is between one side and another, right? You're on one side, you need to get to the other side. The blockage is something that stands in between a traveling that could happen between those two poles.